This series is called Blessed to Me. So we thought we'd kick it off with an understanding of blessing. When you hear the word blessing, what is it that you hear? Have you ever stopped to think about it? Is it that God has shown some kind of favor on us in some way? That we've done something good and therefore deserve something in return, some kind of reward, some kind of blessing? What about those people who obviously do not have all the things that we have necessarily? Are they not equally blessed? So how does blessing work in our world? We thought we'd define this a little bit before we got started. So as you hear the word blessing, you might change your perspective just enough to have you think in a new way. There's a woman named Beth Richardson who has written a book called Christ Beside Me, Christ Within Me, which is one of our resources for this series. And she talks about Celtic spirituality and their way of understanding blessing. And in her book, she writes, Celtic Christians acknowledge God's presence in every aspect of living, from waking to sleeping, from birth to death, from mundane chores to momentous occasions. They perceived God's creation as a holy gift. So blessing for the Celtic spirituals is such that it is literally the ordinary stuff of life, the everyday stuff of life. It is a gift of God. It's God's presence around us that surrounds us and embraces us in everything we do and every encounter we make. Therefore, we are steeped in God's presence and in God's love. And in that, we are able to perceive the world through a sense of gratitude that we didn't have before. So it's about how you receive the blessing, not the blessing as a reward, but that blessing is itself the acknowledgement of God's presence all around us all the time. And if we carry that sense of gratitude, how is that going to change the way we respond to the world?
Psalm 113, verses 1 through 4. Praise the Lord, you who serve the Lord. Praise the Lord's name. Let the Lord's name be blessed from now until forever, from now. From sunrise to sunset, let the Lord's name be praised. The Lord is high over all the nations. God's glory is higher than the skies. Blessing the Story by Beth Richardson. You might think that blessing lives in the story that you can see, that it has curled up in a comfortable spot on the surface of the telling. But this blessing lives in the story beneath the story. It lives in the story, inside the story, in the spaces between, in the edges, the margins, the mysterious gaps, the enticing and fertile emptiness. This blessing makes its home within the layers. This blessing is doorway and portal, passage and path. It is more ancient than imagining and makes itself ever new. This blessing is where the story begins.
And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. It's hard for me to believe that the Sunday after next, I will board a plane in Omaha at dinner time and wake up in an entirely different country, that of Northern Ireland. I mean, can you imagine how long that journey would have taken before the advent of planes, trains, and automobiles? It's like a 12-month journey compressed into the space of 12 hours. I mean, truly extraordinary in my opinion, and perhaps a lot nicer way to travel than they would have had. I mean, the ancients even, they would have conceived the way we can travel like to be pure magic. Far preferable even to taking flying carpets or riding on Harry Potter's broom. We can travel and we've got cocktails and hot meals and climate control and in-flight movies. I venture to suggest the ancients would have even considered the bodily ascension of Christ into heaven to be relatively primitive compared to the style and sophistication with which we move through the air, even in economy class. It's almost inconceivable that anybody would venture to complain about air travel these days. But we do, don't we? Yeah, chalk it up to that first world curse of entitlement. Isn't it interesting how any new technology or product that makes our lives even slightly more comfortable or easier, within 30 seconds, suddenly we go from awe and wonder to entitlement, like we always deserve to have this. I'm guilty of that myself. Just recently I was shopping for a new car and I discovered a feature I'd never been aware of before that are coming out on certain models of car these days. That is radar-guided cruise control. They've got a freaking radar in your car. And it means that you could get on the freeway, set your cruise control at 65 miles an hour, and if a car comes in front of you going 61, your car automatically slows down. Once that car's out of the way, your car just speeds up without you doing anything. I had this childlike wonder about that. I had to have this radar system, and sure enough, I got a car that has that, and I've been using it for about a week and a half, and sure enough, I now feel completely entitled to radar control, cruise control. Every car, from now into eternity, must have this. Of course, by the time I actually buy a new car, it's all going to be like self-driving, right? So it won't really matter. It'll be radar everything. It's amazing how swiftly we move that way. But wouldn't it be incredible, like, if every time I got in my car, I didn't lose that childlike wonder about the gadget, that I actually... That none of it went away. Or if every time I traveled, I remembered, I just had that gratitude that it wasn't going to be 12 months, but 12 hours. And I'd have a sort of good meal and those things. Just that it never, that wonder and that gratitude never really abated, just maybe kind of resided in the corners of my consciousness. Wouldn't every day be a fabulous day? My lucky day? Or what if every good thing that came my way, that the gratitude and wonder I felt over that just never went away, so that it was all there, all at once, all the time? Wouldn't every day be the best day? Wouldn't every day be a holy day? For what is a holy day if not a day that reminds you that every day is holy? And in the Christian tradition, no one understood this idea of holiness better than the ancient Celtic Christians of Ireland, Scotland, and parts of Great Britain and Wales. They, more than perhaps anyone else in our tradition, took the opening chapter of the Gospel of John seriously. That when God created the world, it all came through the Word of God, which in the Gospel of John is the living Christ. That literally Christ is in all created things. And this understanding is reflected quite beautifully in the 5th century prayer of St. Patrick, the first missionary to Ireland. He prayed every day, Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left, Christ when I lie down, Christ when I sit down, Christ when I arise, Christ in the heart of every man who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of everyone who speaks of me, Christ in every eye that sees me, Christ in every ear that hears me. This idea of Christ literally being in all things may seem a bit foreign to our modern understanding, but if we reframe it actually within a modern understanding, within the framework of modern science, perhaps some of that ancient resonance actually becomes clear what they actually meant by this and what it might mean for us. Consider, for instance, that everything we perceive as solid around us is 99.999999999% empty space. That's true. It's true because every atom in your body, if you look at the nucleus of the atom and the surrounding electron cloud, the distance between the nucleus and that cloud on a relative scale is as great as the distance between the Earth and the Sun, which, by the way, is 150 million miles. So on a relative scale, each and every single atom in our body is separated. It has 150 million miles on a relative scale of empty space. I mean, it's amazing we see anything at all, right? But it's amazing that we perceive anything as solid, but it somehow is. And it is because there is energy that's holding this all together. Energy that is swirling, constantly pulsing, radiating, different kinds of energy that science can scarcely understand right now. This energy coursing through all things, bringing it all, holding it all together. Now, if you take that energy, imagine that energy that's really here. I mean, we're all just bundles of swirling, pulsating, radiating energy right now. Imagine that energy has consciousness to it. I mean, we have consciousness and we're energy, so energy must, in some way, and consciousness must be related. Imagine all that energy actually is conscious in some way. If you can imagine that, now you can understand what the Celts understood when they said, Christ is in all things. Christ, consciousness, is in all things. Therefore, all things that are around us, if they have Christ within them, they have a positive intention for us. They have even awareness of us. Maybe not awareness like we know awareness, but awareness as God knows awareness. Has a positive intention for us, a positive will to bless us. Now, I can't claim with absolute certainty that all things are held together by Christ consciousness or any form of consciousness at all. But what I can claim, based on personal experience, is if you treat all things this way, magic happens. If you treat all of creation as if it is consciously, on some level, aware of you and has a positive intentionality towards you, the world just kind of opens before you. It becomes more revelatory for your everyday life. The colors become more intense. The flavors become more wonderful. And your walk upon the earth is far less lonely and, in fact, becomes more and more filled with an awareness of God's very presence. And you're blessed. You constantly feel blessed. Blessed in the only way you really can be blessed, that is, in a way that is received with reverence, not a sense of entitlement. In fact, a sense of entitlement seems to kill every opportunity for blessing that comes our way. Now, seen from this perspective, blessing really has nothing to do with having good luck or wishful thinking. It has nothing to do even with God choosing to bless someone with something and withhold blessing from another. Blessing seems to have actually nothing to do with God's, or whether we receive blessing or not. It seems to have nothing to do with God's intention or not. It has to do with our intention. Our intention to engage with the world in a particular way, with reverence, with respect, and with the expectation that it wants to bless us, with an awareness that all is energy, all, therefore, all things contain the consciousness of the Christ. It's no coincidence that the Hebrew word for blessing, barakah, the root of that word literally means to bend the knee. I mean, how appropriate. Because when you engage in the world in this way, it is with reverence. It is with an awareness that that which comes our way is a gift of God. And whether it really has conscious awareness or not, we know that God has awareness. And therefore, treating everything as if it does have awareness is not so far from any truth that could be told. In fact, closer to any truth that could be told. And this God is aware of us and consciously seeks our benefit, has a positive will towards us. So we bend the knee. We receive those blessings and therefore respond to those blessings by giving blessing away. And in so doing, each and every day becomes for us a truly holy day.
This is the last take for the night. Understand it's kinda late, and I gotta get home to my son, 'cause he's so special to me. I gotta see him, I need to breathe him. That's my baby, don't call me crazy. I love the studio, but I love him more. Let me give you what I got. So I woke up in the morning feeling fresh to death. I'm so blessed, yes, yes. I went to sleep stressed, woke up refreshed. I'm so blessed, yeah, yeah. Water in my face and everything is in its place. Peace of mind, even my grace. I'm so blessed, blessed, yeah, yeah. My grandma almost lived to see 92. I'm so blessed, yes, yes, yes. My son was born healthy and beautiful. I'm so blessed, yeah, yeah. Mama's on my right side, daddy on my left. Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm so blessed, blessed, blessed. Ooh, and I know what I know, and I know what I know. Oh, yeah. Yes, struggle gonna happen. That's the way it be. Ain't nothing come easily in this life. Sometimes you gotta work, you gotta grow, it gotta hurt. I'm sure you know, take a look around. Woke up this morning, listen to this song, it's so blessed, yes, yes, yes. Gonna rock this joint all night long, it's so blessed, yes, yes. To be up in here with our hands in the air, waving like we just don't care. We're so blessed, yeah. Woke woke up this morning feeling fresh to death. Oh, went to sleep stressed, woke up refreshed. Mama's on my right side, daddy's on my left. I'm so blessed, yes. Ooh, I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed.
A reading from the big book from Alcoholics Anonymous. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day, and before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. And in thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine what course to take. And here, we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought or a decision. We don't struggle. We are often surprised at how the right answers come.
Given the pervasiveness of holiness and blessing in our everyday lives, it's perhaps no coincidence that many of the great religious traditions of the world have developed ways of marking not only the beginning and ending of our days, but also points to remind ourselves to open our eyes to see, to open our ears to hear those blessings, to receive those blessings. Of all the world religions, no one does this on a vaster scale than Islam. If you are a Muslim, one of the 5 tenets of your religion, the 5 pillars of Islam, which means it's obligatory for every able-bodied and able-minded Muslim to perform, is the Salat prayer. That is a prayer that happens 5 times a day, depending on where the sun is in the sky. So you're actually noticing where the sun is in the sky and the movement of the day. To perform Salat prayer, you first need to find a place that is ritually clean, because you're about to enter a very holy atmosphere. Now, ritually clean can be as simple as a closet in an office someplace that you've identified and reserved for this purpose. But before you enter that prayer, you also cleanse yourself. You draw water and wash your hands. You wash your arm up to the elbow. You wash your nose, your mouth, your face, the fringe of your hair, your ears, and finally, your feet. And it is then that you stand and you offer a prayer. And then you bow with your palms on your knees. And then you stand again and pray. And then you get down on your knees and hands, touching the tip of your nose and your forehead to the ground, and pray. And then you sit and you remind yourself of the compassion and presence and authority of God. And then you bow once more to the ground. And then you sit once more, taking this all in once again. 5 times a day you do this thing. Can you imagine how your life might change if you did this simple ritual or something like it 5 times a day? Now, obviously, we look out at the world, we see plenty of people who are actually doing this, who seem to live lives that are not connected to God, not connected to a sense of holiness. And yet, when it comes to your own personal experience of Muslims, it's probably no coincidence that in our own personal experience of Muslims, we often find Muslims to be some of the kindest, gentlest, most gracious, generous, spirited people there are. I mean, how could you not be if you are authentically engaging in this practice every day, authentically reminding yourselves of the blessings that are coming moment by moment and of the presence of God and the positive intentionality of the world? Surely every day would be a great day. Every day for you would be a holy day.
You think this is just another day in your life? It's not just another day. It's the one day that is given to you today. It's given to you. It's a gift. It's the only gift that you have right now, and the only appropriate response is gratefulness. If you do nothing else but to cultivate that response to the great gift that this unique day is, if you learn to respond as if it were the first day in your life and the very last day, then you will have spent this day very well. Begin by opening your eyes and be surprised that you have eyes you can open. That incredible array of colors that is constantly offered to us for pure enjoyment. Look at the sky. We so rarely look at the sky. We so rarely note how different it is from moment to moment with clouds coming and going. We just think of the weather, and even of the weather we don't think of all the many nuances of weather. We just think of good weather and bad weather. This day, right now, has unique weather. Maybe a kind that will never exactly in that form come again. The formation of clouds in the sky will never be the same that is right now. Open your eyes, look at that. Look at the faces of people whom you meet. Each one has an incredible story behind their face. A story that you could never fully fathom. Not only their own story, but the story of their ancestors. We all go back so far. And in this present moment, on this day, all the people you meet, all that life from generations and from so many places all over the world, flows together and meets you here like a life-giving water if you only open your heart and drink. open your heart to the incredible gifts that civilization gives to us. You flip a switch and there is electric light. You turn a faucet and there is warm water and cold water and drinkable water. It's a gift that millions and millions in the world will never experience. So these are just a few of an enormous number of gifts to which we can open your heart. And so I wish you that you will open your heart to all these blessings and let them flow through you, that everyone whom you will meet on this day will be blessed by you. Just by your eyes, by your smile, by your touch, just by your presence. Let the gratefulness overflow into blessing all around you. And then it will really be a good day.
Matthew 6, verse 11. Give us this day our daily bread. Praying by Mary Oliver. It doesn't have to be the blue iris. It could be weeds in a vacant lot or a few small stones. Just pay attention, then patch a few words together, and don't try to make them elaborate. This isn't a contest, but the doorway into thanks and a silence in which another voice may speak.
Of course, Islam is not the only of the world religions to have developed serious practices of praying throughout the day. In fact, each of the Abrahamic faiths have long ago developed techniques. If you're an Orthodox Jew, for instance, you pray 3 times a day during the week, 4 times on the Sabbath and on certain holidays. Now, while the practice is not widely practiced these days in Christianity, in the monastic traditions, they've been practiced continually, a prayer that they call the prayer of hours or the divine hours, which is a set of 7 prayers that start actually before dawn and then continue throughout the day until the Compline prayers at about 9 o'clock at night. So even in our tradition, there's this ancient practice of praying throughout the day. Now, I've been a fan of prayer and meditation through the last 35 years, but I have to admit that I've not been able to work up a prayer practice discipline that takes me through the day like that. I've tried before, but usually after the first few days, I kind of lose the practice. I forget, or I fail to schedule my time, and it kind of goes away. Instead, what I've done is just anchor my day with about a half an hour or so of prayer and meditation, and then just kind of offer prayers as the Spirit moves me at other points of the day. But this last year, I began experimenting again with a way of trying to keep that attention so that engage in regular prayer and awareness throughout the day. And I just happened to stumble upon a way that actually has been working for me. And I mention this not that you will go and do likewise, but if you're curious, I'll tell you what I do. I've discovered, I realized, well, you already know of me that I'm somebody who rarely forgets about having a meal. Rarely forget even to have those in-between meal snacks. Like father, like daughter, although she wears her love of food a lot more gracefully in her body than mine. But I realized, I never forget those things. And so if I would actually integrate a prayer ritual routine around my eating, I might stand half a chance of actually keeping up a discipline. And sure enough, that's exactly what has happened. And since it began happening, it's actually my days have been really very much more alive with that sense of blessing, of constant blessing. So what I do is, again, I'm not saying this that you go do likewise. I'm just telling you what I do that's worked for me. But what I do is before any food has entered my mouth, I remember Christ's words. This is my body which is broken for you. Do this as often as you eat of it in remembrance of me. This is my blood which is shed for you. I remember these things. I remember that Christ, as the Celts say, is in all things. And I also recall then that there are a number of broken bodies and a lot of shed blood to get me this meal before me. If only the shed, the broken body of the animal or the plant that has given its life for my benefit, and that shed blood, if only the life energy of those who have harvested the fruits of the earth and who have transported it and processed it and offered it for sale and perhaps prepared it and offered it to me. I remember as many of these things as I can for each and every part of the food chain that I am actually bringing into my body. And it's only then that I begin to eat. And again, I think about these things. I don't read the paper. I don't watch TV. I try to think about these things as much as possible without looking weird. And I find, as much as I've been a foodie over the years, I think I've appreciated food a lot. The flavors are more intense. I notice things a lot more, even the textures, the smells, even the sound of the food. I notice these things all the more. And this awareness has not only then deepened an awareness of blessing for me through the food, but also deepened an awareness of blessing through other things in life. Just looking out at a tree or hearing bird song. I'm hearing bird song like I've never heard in my life before. Just awareness of those things coming towards me and dwelling within my conscious awareness in some way. And even it's spilling over more and more into my awareness of Christ in all things, including people. And as much as I can, I'm finding that I'm hearing Christ in the words and the actions and those touches and smiles of everyday people as well. And hopefully I'm responding better to that and maybe offering a little bit more blessing to the world in so doing. How do you find holiness in your day? How do you find blessing in your day? It may not be through food. You may or may not try this technique yourself, but I would offer the suggestion, with the invitation, really, to consider your day. How do you make it a good day? How do you make it a holy day? For it is God's intention that you have one. And therefore, the rest of that intentionality is left up to you. Of course, that holiness, that blessing is very much embodied in this meal which has been partaken of throughout centuries now. The very basis of that understanding of Christ in all things. For we remember that on a night of betrayal and desertion, Christ took bread and he broke this bread and said, "This is my body which is broken for you. Do this as often as you eat of it in remembrance of me." And so likewise, he took that cup after supper, saying, "This is the cup of the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink of it in remembrance of me." By eating this bread and drinking this cup, we remember Christ's death. We celebrate Christ's resurrection. And we take into our very bodies the power of death and resurrection, the very blessing of resurrection, resurrected life. We come to experience Christ in truly all things, that we may respond to life accordingly. You do not have to be a member of Countryside Community Church or subscribe to any particular doctrine or dogma to come forward to this table. All that we ask is if your heart calls you forward, know that you are most welcome here. So likewise, if you prefer to receive communion from your seat, simply raise your hand as an usher passes and you'll be served there. Or if you prefer to abstain altogether and simply exist in that holy moment, feel free to do this as well. But if you come forward, we invite you to take a piece of bread and dip it into the cup. And as you do so, perhaps you will also remember that every meal is a taking into your body of Christ, if only through the Christ consciousness that exists in all things. The gifts of God for the people of God. As our ushers come forward to prepare this table, I invite you to remind ourselves of who we are and whose we are. We are an inclusive, open and affirming family of faith, welcoming all to God's table of love and acceptance. We are diverse yet united by Christ's example. We care for one another, support one another, and challenge one another to become all that God creates us to be. We work together to nurture our community and to promote peace and justice in our conflicted world.